and the director there, Linda Keane, was fired for closing the thing down. She established that there are dangers of nuclear power and we shouldn't use it, and that was it. So the countries of France, Russia, Japan, and China have put a protest in the United Nations, which goes on the table tomorrow morning, concerning how we are going to take nuclear waste and turn it into fuel. And of course, we're in the climate change fiasco of misrepresentation of information. All of that in the process of this. So now we plant you into this whole thing, and you're revealing the exact reason we shouldn't even have deuterated uranium.
Depleted uranium.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's look at the big picture. The big picture, it took me 8 years to figure out all of this, working 18 hours a day. But the big picture is that the City of London bankers, the international bankers, they actually control the nuclear power industry, and they also secretly control the nuclear weapons program. And since the 1700s, they have advocated for depopulation. They're the ones who started the overpopulation scam, and they've continued to hype this in the media that they control, in the universities that they control and serve their purposes. And so it's very it's just embedded in people's minds. But depopulation isn't necessary. It's actually capitalism and modern agricultural practices that have cut down by 10 times the amount of food production from these modern agricultural technologies. Indigenous technologies produce 10 times more food. So we don't have an overpopulation program, but in order to get a hold of the world's wealth, they have to exterminate populations. And so the nuclear power and the nuclear weapons programs and their byproducts are being engineered and used by the City of London, the international bankers, and the Wall Street bankers to cause the deaths of 2 to 4 billion people in future years. It's already done. We've been living in a continuous nuclear war since 1945, Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Mm-hmm.
All of the atomic and hydrogen bombs have depleted uranium in them. It's packed around the tiny plutonium core, which is less than 20 pounds. And so all these nuclear bomb tests that were done, the equivalent of 40,000 Hiroshima bombs, were released into the atmosphere by the superpowers doing their bomb testing, starting in 1947 and continuing until 1963 when the Partial Test Ban Treaty ended bomb testing by Russia, Britain, and the U.S., but other states continued. And so the City of London owns the nuclear power industry. They own the nuclear weapons industry, or it serves their purposes. And they've initiated this campaign to exterminate 2 to 4 billion people.
Mm-hmm.
The genetically modified organisms, the GM, the whole GM industry is part of that. The poisoning of drinking water is part of that. This is happening all over the world, and it's being directed from a central location. It's being directed from the City of London. And the Queen of England and the Rockefellers own much of the uranium supplies around the world. Most of the uranium deposits are in Australia, Africa, and Canada. So that serves the purposes of the British Empire, and the Queen of England personally owns. It's not the royal family, it's not the crown, it's the Queen of England who personally owns the uranium.
Yeah, I know that this is has a high probability of truth on the thing. I opened the show with this idea that Britain signs tomorrow, the same day that it goes to the United Nations, this subject that we're talking about, that Britain is denying treatment to anyone over 65 or people who have unhealthy lifestyles, and plus people who are obese. And they put them in what I call, what I've always called the economy of scale, which is a certain percentage of the people are going to die anyway kind of statement, which is usually used, and it always has been said at about 5% for about 10 years now. So the addition of people being selectively programmed in to be curtailed on health care is integrally involved in your statement, I feel. And
well, it's let me just read to you a statement from the National Security Memo 200, April 24th, 1974. The title of this memo is Implications of Worldwide Population Growth for U.S. Security and Overseas Interests. This is from a paper I've written. Depopulation, this is not the memo, this is the intro. Depopulation through a continuous global covert nuclear war has been waged against citizens, paid for by citizens through taxation, and privatized and secretly implemented by the global ruling elite. From 62 years of depleted uranium wars alone, global public health has been devastated by large increases in death rates. And when that's what you're talking about in England, they're increasing the death rates and chronic disease and decreasing the birth rates because radiation causes infertility, both evident in the vital statistics of many countries since 1945. And I've gone to lots of countries and collected the data, and it's in the vital statistics of Japan, the U.S., and many other countries. So this is about Henry Kissinger and depopulation. Quote from the National Security Memo 200. Dr. Henry Kissinger proposed in his memorandum to the National Security Council that, quote, depopulation should be the highest priority of U.S. foreign policy towards the Third World, unquote. He quoted reasons of national security and because the U.S. economy will require large and increasing amounts of minerals from abroad, especially from less developed countries.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever a lessening of population can increase the prospects for such stability, population policy becomes relevant to resources, supplies, and to the economic interests of the U.S.
Yeah, and when we get back from the other end of the break to start our second hour, I'd like you to continue with that thought and on nanotubes.